I'm just a bit unsure, Mike, because you said you'd introduce me. That's still
Yeah,
happening? Oh, cool.
absolutely. So, it delights me to welcome Steffan Hagger, who's a great friend of mine, somebody that I've known for a good few years now on the information security circuit. He's going to talk about life from an attacker's point of view. So, over to you, Steffan, mate.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me. I want to talk about the attacker's point of view. That much is true. But actually, I want to do it so that people in the blue team, people like myself, because I originally am very much blue team centric, can do something about what the bad attackers actually do to us. Or maybe we can't do a lot. So it should be a really basic talk covering a few topics, a broad range of topics, but maybe none of the topics too deeply. If you are really, really interested in that, then please go to my Twitter. I've got a poll running whether you're interested in a workshop about that, and we'll see where that goes. But without further anythings, a talk like that, which deals with attacking your own company or somebody else, has to come with a disclaimer, or to be more precise, with a few disclaimers. So all the stuff I'm going to talk about is from a perspective of a defender that is looking at their own company, because that's my role at the moment. I'm looking at our company from the outside, try to identify weaknesses and weak spots from network level to social media and everything in between. And it is very interesting to see what you can find out about a company. And usually you would only do that if you were interested in your own company or if you wanted to attack it, because this is the first phase of any successful attack. The attacker will probably go ahead and try to figure out how to attack you. What kind of information can they find for spear phishing emails, for any other stuff? So please bear in mind that everything I show you, please just use it with your own company. And of course, I'm also talking about identifying some secret projects of yours, or maybe finding out interesting information about your VIPs and stuff like that. And maybe if you are interested whether some kind of information has leaked about one of your secret projects named, I don't know, Rainy Unicorn or something like that, then it's a really, really bad idea to put that into a shady search engine or any website that might give you information. Never give out any kind of information that you don't want to have publicly available, and try to be sneaky and try to think like an attacker. They wouldn't know your secrets. So just don't give away information freely. And the next point is one of the points where people regularly laugh when I do that in front of live audiences or ask them, try to have permission from your company in writing if you do stuff like that. The reason I'm saying this is not because I think you shouldn't trust your company. Of course you should. But I've had a talk with a few people, and they said that penetration testers, especially internal penetration testers, very often have been fired on the grounds that they did penetration testing, which basically was their job description. But human resources found it very easy to fire those guys if there was nothing written in place that said they are allowed to do that. So try to have some kind of permission before you do stuff like that, please. It is for your own good. And of course, whatever you're doing, you should always be aware of the impact of whatever it is that you're doing. So for example, if you try to get into the mind of a DDoS attacker and bring down your website, and you're very happy that you managed that, then probably if you haven't done that during a scheduled change window, other people in the company will not be that happy. So just please bear all those in mind. And then there's the good question about why. Why would you want to do that? What is the reason why you should put on the glasses of an attacker and have a look at a really good, thorough look at the company from the outside? Well, the first point is, since 20, 25 years, whenever companies put their machines and linked them to the internet and connected them to the internet, there has been this question of the perimeter, and protecting the perimeter is everything. But since about 5, 7, 8 years maybe, nobody really has a clue where the perimeter is supposed to be. And my reasoning is this: if you have no idea what you need to defend, then you can't really do a very good job defending it. Because even if your protection is really good and you think you thought about everything, just check, can't hurt. This is the first part of the motivation. And of course, there's always a second part, which is sometimes it's really, really funny to think about burning down your company. And I don't mean that in a very negative way, but if you're thinking about what you could do from the outside, just to really, really be a pain in the ass for your company, that can be a lot of fun. And of course, you may stumble upon stuff that needs to be patched or that needs to be addressed. Detection, of course, is just one part of a really good security strategy. Usually companies that are bigger, that are not very small, are very good with protection because they've been in this business for years. They've got their firewalls, they've got everything to secure the perimeter, they've got IDSs, IPSs, intrusion detection or prevention systems. And this is, well, you can debate which is which, but most of the companies are really, really focused on protection. And then there is detection. That is what we are going to talk about in the next few minutes. And of course, there would be reaction as well. These are, for me, the three main things that make up a very good security strategy. Protection, most of us have that covered. And reaction is a little bit harder to do. That has to do with processes and probably stuff that really sounds very boring. But detection can really be a lot of fun. So, and just to give you an example why I nowadays think that detection is a lot more interesting than just protection. I think 10 or 15 years ago, we built up intrusion detection sensors for a company I worked for back then. And I was really absolutely adamant that there is absolutely no joy in putting a sensor just outside the firewall facing the internet, because of course the poor thing gets attacked. And because back then I thought whatever hits it, but then hits the firewall and can't cross to the internal networks, is of no interest to me, because I get flooded with logs and file alerts and alerts anyway. So why would I care about that? Nowadays, I think a little bit differently. I still wouldn't put an IDS sensor just facing the internet, but there's a lot of stuff that we can have a look at from the internet that might be really interesting. And then please don't get lured into the thinking that your stuff is unhackable. I guess this is proven time and time again that this is just a myth. And that guy in the picture didn't even eat his own dick, so don't believe him. And there's also always the thought of nobody really is interested in our company. Again, that might be true. You might be really obscure, and whatever you're doing might not be of interest to criminals, you think. But as soon as your company's assets are connected to the internet, you will be a target. Your company will be a target. Maybe not for your intellectual property, but maybe for your servers, your networks, your bandwidth, and other stuff that can be done when people find a way to attack your infrastructure and carry out more attacks that seem to originate from you. So people are interested in your company to one degree or to a lesser or bigger degree. One thing we are not going to talk about in length here is physical security. I think it's really funny because just a few minutes before I started the talk, I thought to myself whether physical security nowadays is easier to achieve or harder. Because if somebody breaks into your company and is really stealthy about it, will you notice it quicker if there were people in the office or if there is just a few guards around? I don't know. Physical security in itself is a really, really interesting topic, but I'm not going into that too deeply here. I just have one small video that shows why it is interesting to think about that. There's this device which is basically a wire on a small metal rod that you can use, like this guy in this video. Let me show it to you. Yes, in this video, the door has a glass pane and he can see everything, but basically this is my boss and he did it on the very first try. And this is just, as I said, a little bit of string, a loop of string, a wire, and a rod. And usually all the offices can be opened from the inside. All right. So if you manage to open the office from the inside, like this guy does, then you are in the office rooms. So again, very often people say that is not a problem because we lock everything. There's nothing on the desk. You can't take anything away from the desks. But this is the first thing, where I think people need to start rethinking security, because maybe I don't want to steal anything. Maybe I just want to bug your office. Maybe I just want to leave something there. And what's going to protect me, protect anybody from me doing that? So physical security, have a look into that, but it's not really the focus of this presentation. Unfortunately, I love doing physical security. I suck at it. I would so love to be good at lockpicking and other stuff, but hey, I'm not. The main thing to think about if you are trying to figure out how to attack your company is also to find out who would do that in the real world. Who are your threat actors? Who are the people who are really focused on attacking your company? So there are a few answers to that. There's a lot of ways. There are a lot of ways how you could probably put that into a slide. I put skill as the y-axis and target as the x-axis, just to make clear what I mean. So ransomware and other attacks like that just target everyone. If you're vulnerable to some form of attack and people can get in and can install ransomware, then you're just a target. That has nothing to do with your company or whatever field, business sector your company operates in. Absolutely nothing. It's just everybody, you're an innocent bystander. As far as targets go, then attackers might actually target your business sector. That becomes a little bit more interesting because then the attacks will be more focused and they will be more sophisticated, generally speaking. And of course, there are people who might attack your company specifically. Very often, this is the case if you have intellectual property that is really very interesting or have something really, really special. Unfortunately, the people specifically attacking specific companies are very often also very high skilled. So with the ransomware attacks and everything, you very often see people who are low skilled. This is not meant as a derogatory term or anything. It's just for the exploits you can find for new CVEs, the POCs and everything, you don't need a lot of skill to put it together. So we in the industry used to call these people script kiddies. I have to admit that, sorry, I have to get the cat out of the picture. Craves attention. I'm a script kiddie myself because I think going to GitHub, finding something that suits my needs and just using it instead of writing my own stuff is really, really easy. And basically, I am a lazy person at times. If I need something very specific that doesn't exist, I write my own tools. But apart from that, I'm fine with using stuff. And so should you be if you try to test your own company. Of course, that doesn't mean run any kind of exploit you find against your company because, yeah, you don't really know what it does or what else it does, to be fair. So And higher up on the level are nation states and everything, and people that might attack you might not attack you. But this really depends on your company. If you really realistically think that some kind of nation state or organized criminal gang with a lot of funds is going to target your company specifically, then hopefully you have the team and the budget to defend against that. If not, then any kind of reconnaissance and everything won't really help you a lot. And there's one kind of attacker that I didn't especially mention because it's not in the focus of this presentation, and that's the privileged insider, who for me sits right there in the upper right corner because this is the most dangerous attacker you could have. But again, it's not the focus right now. So since this presentation is just 40 minutes and not a workshop, I put in a few slides for you for later if you are interested in that. Some to-dos. Of course, I won't check your homework. It's just a pointer for you if you really want to see more. Spend some time thinking about who might attack you, and also think about competitors, about countries, about whatever you can think about. Do some tabletop exercises about people who are likely to attack you, because it's really important that you spend your budget on stuff that defends against the threats you are facing. And that's not a box that you bought at InfoSecurity that says, I protect against everything, and I do it with AI and Bitcoin mining or whatever. So the very, very basics that you are probably all familiar with are the network layers. So first thing I would suggest is, when you're carrying out attacks against your own company, use a machine that has internet access, of course, but that is not connected to your internal networks in any kind, because you want to take the view from an attacker's perspective, and you should be able to do that. And of course, if you're using any kind of interesting pieces of software, you might infect yourself, or your machine that you use might get pawned. So you don't want that to be happening. Use a machine that is not connected back to your company network. And very important, get read access to all the relevant log files. Because of course you want to learn from these attacks, right? You want to get to know how these attacks look when they are actually actively carried out against you. And you want to know what to look out for in your CM or log file solution or whatever you have. And you want to create actionable alerts from that. So you really need to have read access to the log files. And another really important point is that you should be open in internal communications as well. And you should work with your colleagues and not against them, because there's nothing more unfunny than getting to the crisis room and people sitting there since 2 or 3 hours trying to figure out who's attacking them, and you just going giggling and saying, hey, that was me. Doesn't really work that way, and not really very well. So just play along nicely with your colleagues. They will thank you, and it's better for the whole company. If you've never done it, start scanning your networks. If you only pay pen testing companies to scan your network, just go ahead and start doing it yourself. There's so many good tools. I just picked out 2 of them. That is Nmap and Marscan. Nmap, of course, you can scan not just for open ports, you can scan for vulnerabilities like SSL vulnerabilities like Heartbleed and others. Make yourself comfortable with them and use them on a regular basis. If your networks are a little bit larger, say you've got more than a Class C network, then also familiarize yourself with Masscan, because this is a way how you can scan for, say, a single port in a very, very short amount of time. The interesting thing is, whenever a new vulnerability comes up that maybe targets, I don't know, RDP or any kind of port, then the first thing you should do is to scan all your networks, whether this port is open, and check those machines, whether they are vulnerable. Because Basically, this is what an attacker would do. And if you're quicker than the attacker, then there's a small chance that you get it patched before somebody abuses it, right? Yeah. And then scanning is the one thing. If you were really attacking your company, you might not do it from your own box, right? You might use a VPN, or maybe you would actually employ a specialist. With specialists, I mean websites that are going to do the scanning for you. There are way, way more than I just listed here on the slides, a lot more, and you can find them easily. The ones I've listed on the slides, I hope they are more or less benign. They won't do any shady stuff, but of course, I don't know. I can't take any responsibility for them. But the one that may be a little bit of a challenge for you is the German one, the IT experts. Well, German language. It's an Austrian site, of course, but this one can do IP version 6. So far, when I talked about scanning, very often I was just referring to IP version 4, because although IP version 6 is really, really an adult now, I think. It's been around for a lot of years, but it didn't have the kind of impact that we thought it had 6 or 7 years ago. It's there, it's important. It should have the impact because we are running out of addresses. But scanning IPv6, of course, is a challenge. There are so many more IP addresses. There are also very good talks about how you can find any kind of machines that hide in v6 address space. But as I said, itexperts.at can scan IPv6 address spaces for you. Try it out, please. And then, of course, there are the likes of Shodan and company. So apart from Shodan, there's Census and ZoomEye, or at least these are the ones that I have here in the slides. If you have never heard of Shodan before, I can't really imagine you haven't. But if you haven't, it is a search engine where you can easily search for vulnerabilities or for stuff that is connected to the internet and has default credentials or anything that might be a security problem. You will find on Shodan, probably. You will also find a lot of honeypots and stuff that doesn't work. And here's the thing. You probably will find interesting stuff if you search for your company. Please remember the disclaimers, and also please remember local laws. There are enough countries where logging into a security camera with default credentials is already a breach of law. As far as I know, the UK and of course Germany are amongst them, but it really depends on where you are. So this is where the whole have permission in writing and just do it for your own company comes into play. Census very often has similar results to Shodan, but ZoomEye, which I believe is Chinese, has sometimes very interesting results as well. So just spread out with your tool use and use several tools at once. It might give you very interesting insights. So with all that, the sky's the limit, right? No, of course it's not. When it comes to scanning, then you will, for example, miss out on all the UDP ports. You will not be able to see whether a UDP port is open or not, because that is the whole protocol. Depending on the service that it uses, you won't get anything in reply. TCP is different because you need a three-way handshake to have a connection established, but UDP, you can just send something there and you might not ever know whether it arrived or not. And of course, there's other stuff like services might give you the wrong banner, might give you the wrong version. There might be some port knocking in some setups, but I don't believe that will be the case for professional setups. Port knocking is when you have a daemon that is listening to packets on every possible port, and maybe if they come in the right order, like port 10,000, port 12,000, port 3,000, then it will open up SSH. But actually, It's kind of fancy, but no serious business does that. And I hope you don't too. So when you want to take a deep dive, deeper than just finding out the open ports, then, and yes, I'm sorry that I used that picture together with deep dive. But then you can use Nessus or Open VAS, I think it is. Never know how that is actually pronounced. But those two tools will actually try a little bit more than just get a banner or a connection to any kind of port. And depending on the configuration, we'll try to abuse whatever service is running on them. And I'm not saying just skip all the pen testing done by external companies and do it yourself. The reason why you're doing that yourself is because you can then have a look at the logs and see how that all looks like when an attacker does that, and try to come up with a clever way of alerting someone when this happens. Again, there's nothing you can really do about it, but sometimes it's interesting to know. And one honorable mention that I just have to get out there is robtext.com, because if you feed robtext.com just an AS, like our AS or address space or whatever, it comes up with this nifty little graph of how it is all connected. Your mail records, your MX records, your name servers, your address records and everything, and paints a beautiful picture. And the funny thing is, the picture is even more beautiful than anything the network team has come up with so far that I'm aware of. So use that for your own documentation if you want to. Try it out, please. The topics of paste bins is also a very interesting one. If you're not familiar with them, these are sites where you can just paste anything that you just copied, like amounts of text, amounts of code, and very often, or sometimes, well, up until now, people have shared breaches and breach data on pastebins as well, especially pastebin.com, which is the first on this list. Which means if any kind of web service was breached and people got away with the user database and probably the hash passwords or the passwords in clear text, very often people would put it on pastebin to just put it out in the open. This is or was really interesting for researchers as well, because you had access to a scraping API if you paid for it. And this API would just, give you all the pastes that have come in for a certain keyword, like your company name or anything. And you would be really, really quickly aware if something has been shared on Pastebin. So the problem is that this week, Pastebin decided to scrape the scraping API and discontinue it. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I don't know whether there are already interesting ways to deal with that. Somebody suggested just use Google and in URL Google Docs, but I don't think this is going to work. And the problem here is that Pastebin is one of the few pastebins where any user could see any of the pastes. There are pastebins like Kleber.io and I think Ghostbin as well, where you can paste, but you don't really see the results unless you have the link. So with a lot of these things, very often it just gives you a small degree of detection. But in my opinion, if you just detect 20% of something, this is still better than detecting 0%. Of course, 100% or 95% would even still be way, way better. But we have to deal with whatever we can get, right? And then there are breaches. So, have I been pawned.com? I'm not actually questioning that. I am quite aware that you know about that site. If you don't, shame on you. But, well, no shame, not really, because it's a wide universe. But then if you don't know about that site, please check it out. You can enter your email address and find out whether this has been in a recent breach. The thing is, Have I Been Pawned and similar sites, to me, have one drawback, which is completely, totally understandable, but still a drawback. Troy Hunt, the guy behind haveibeenpawned.com, doesn't really give you a lot of contextual information. So even if the breach had password hashes or details about the breach, they won't be really mentioned in Have I Been Pawned. So I can't really do a lot with that. I can still notify my users, but if I had access to the original breach and maybe hashed passwords or passwords in clear text, I could do a better job in informing my users what has been breached. Because the problem is rarely the site that has been breached, but it's password reuse. If somebody used a certain password for Adobe and that has been breached, there's a good chance this person will use the password for other sites. So that is the real problem with breaches. If you want to, there are password lists aplenty to be found on the internet. One of the most infamous ones is the rockyou.txt. You can find that on the second link. And you can check passwords aplenty against the list of breached passwords and see whether your users came up with really something very good or maybe not so good. So please be aware of breaches. And whenever you get the knowledge of a new breach, you really need to react fast. Have I Been Pawned gives you the option of entering your domain and being alerted when users with that domain in their email address are breached. So go ahead and do that. You need to have access either to the DNS servers or certain email addresses, because not everybody can do a domain search for any domain. You really need to be the owner of the domain or know the owner of the domain, but this is a very good thing to do. Code leaks, do not underestimate stuff that's pasted on GitHub or Stack Overflow. There is stuff on there, configurations and configuration problems, and maybe code snippets, maybe API keys that could be used to either passively find out about your infrastructure, because maybe one of your sysadmins posted a certain configuration problem with a specific type of software. And this is very interesting to see. Just go to these sites and look for your company, look what's up there, and really make sure that the information that is publicly available on those sites isn't something that's going to bite you in the ass later. And one of the nicest things, I think, to find out about breached stuff or find out about stuff that is a problem already, but you don't know about it, are sinkholes. If you're unfamiliar with sinkholes, usually when malware, probably all the malware guys will just kill me for that, but I try a simple explanation, please bear with me. Usually if malware tries to communicate back to its command and control server, this command and control server will maybe hide behind a lot of different DNS names, but after all, it probably will resolve, or it sure will resolve to one IP or just a handful of IPs. So internet providers are very eager to work together with certain organizations and, of course, with officials to take down those IP addresses. And sometimes those benign companies will put a sinkhole there. So the idea is whoever communicates to that sinkhole is an infected client, or maybe another command and control server trying to communicate with its sibling. This traffic can be analyzed and can be very insightful. And funnily enough, if you have infected clients that want to communicate with a C2 server and just hit a sinkhole, then there is shadowserver.org, and they will notify you if that is the case. If you register with shadowserver.org, you get a lot of benefits when it comes to sinkholes and just checks for your company, regular checks like whether, well, Heartbleed again, maybe as an example, or whether you have any kind of telnet ports, and so on and so forth. If you're working for a company and have never heard of shadowserver.org before, please go there and have a look. It might really help you out. And speaking of helping out, Shadow Server in the United States at the moment has a bit of a problem financially wise because Cisco withdrew its financial support and they need to find a lot of money in a very short amount of time. The European Shadow Server is at the moment not affected, but it will be, I think, if that takes too long. Just looking, I have 4 minutes left, and that's fine because we're nearly through. The next things deserve a talk on their own sometimes, like the deep web and the darknet. How do you search that? The answer is very often it is too much a job for a single person or 2 or 3 in your own organization. Sometimes you will have to pay for external expertise with that. What you can do are Google Docs, if you've never heard about them. You can ask Google to only show you documents with certain features, like in URL. Somewhere in the URL, there should be the password file, and in the text should be something like root x00. This is a screenshot that I found just a few weeks ago. I shouldn't say I found it, somebody found it. But it's really not a really good configuration if you see your password file on the internet. So just play around with that. The slides will be publicly available. So I hope you have a look at all these links. And social media nowadays, it's, I think, one of the last things I'm going to cover. It's very interesting to have sock puppets that are not associated with your company or yourself. So you can do research on Facebook or on Twitter, and you can have Twitter APIs and streams. But of course, disclaimer, carefully read through the terms and conditions, because on these 1,000 pages of terms and conditions, those social media companies very often want to make sure that you really only register with your own name and that sock puppets are not allowed. So decide for yourself whether a breach of the terms and conditions might be worth it or not. Another way to detect attackers once they actually started doing stuff are honey tokens and anything honey related. This is another topic I could talk at length about, and in fact I have, and this is a shameless plug. There's a SteelCon presentation from I think 2 or 3 years ago about the whole honey in the age of cyber thing. It's way too much to put it in this presentation as well. If you're interested, I'm also happy to talk about that all day long. But yeah, check that one out, please. One more thing that larger companies often face are legitimate company sites on third-party servers. So without naming names, marketing departments sometimes feel that the process of getting a server and a website up and running, the internal IT team, is just too tedious and too slow. And so they buy web space from somebody else and put up company info there. How do you find those sites? Because often enough, they won't tell you about it. Probably because the IT team would then say, please take it down and put it on our servers. Well, the answer is try to Google for the legitimate disclaimers, for the disclaimers that you have, and any legal stuff, because this is usually a little bit different. And of course, your VIP names. If you have to state who the CEO is on your websites, and then the marketing team will do that as well. And just have a look at that and try to rein them in, because you can't really protect what's running on somebody else's server. The same is with web anomalies. You could always try and check whether all the stuff that is online and pretends to be your server is really just the website that you put on the server, and that it's not some malicious injected JavaScript code by somebody who breached your server all along. This is very often very well hidden from the inside, and you could just take a snapshot of your website from the outside and try to compare it with whatever the web team thinks is the correct website, and try to figure out whether there are any kind of JavaScript artifacts and anomalies that you don't want there.
Okay,
and again,
Steffan.
I know
we have sadly run out of time, and it's a hard stop, unfortunately, because we've got a schedule that we're trying to keep quite tight. But I would like to say thank you very much for your testimony. Really good detail, exceptional insights. We'll try and get some questions over to you, maybe in a side channel, but we really appreciate you joining us today. So thank you very much. And there's
thank you.
Steffan's details. Thank you.
Thanks.